Firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for having me here to speak on behalf of Prostate Cancer Australia. I'd like to thank the relationship we have with Prostate Cancer New Zealand. It's an ANZAC family relationship. We basically do the same things. We do them about the same, but we do them about 5 times bigger. And the only reason we do them 5 times bigger is we've got 5 times the population. So our statistics and our fundraising and our research programs are just relative to our population. I was going to show you a research video at the end of my talk. This is a program that we're currently funding. It's a program that's just starting in Australia. It's a random trial of 200 patients. We've just signed up the 150th. It's out of Peter McCullum Institute in Melbourne. This is being funded by PCFA, and the reason I'm playing it first because it's very relevant to the conversation that was just finishing, totally coincidentally.
New technology in PET scanning is revolutionising the treatment of advanced prostate cancer. The first stage of the process uses a new high-tech approach to detect how far the patient's prostate cancer has spread. A radioactive tracer is manufactured by attaching a gallium-68 atom to a special molecule called a ligand. When injected into the body, the ligand attaches itself, like a key fitting into a lock, to a protein called prostate-specific membrane antigen, or PSMA for short, which is found on the surface of prostate cells. Up to 1,000 times more PSMA is found on prostate cancer cells, including prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body. The second stage of the process is treatment. This involves attaching a different radioactive atom to the ligand and injecting it into the patient's body. This new radioactive atom, lutetium-177, decays more slowly than gallium-68 and gives off a beta particle which kills the cancer. Doctors inject the lutetium-ligand combination into the patient's body and it attaches itself to the cancer cells, where it begins to deliver the radiation. The beta particles only travel 1 millimetre, so they deliver high levels of radiation to the cancer cells, killing the cancer. The initial gallium-68 scan helps the doctors to determine the correct dose.
And you can see that almost everything's back to normal. In fact, if we looked at this scan, it's hard to pick an abnormality. So all the tumours in the bones, but also the adrenal glands and the lungs have disappeared. And we can look at this in a variety of other ways. This is a slice through your body this way, and these are the tumour spread to the adrenal glands here in the red with the liver and the body in the background, and we can see that they've completely disappeared.
Results to date have been promising, but more work needs to be done to understand the potential of the new treatment.
He had the treatment, and then a couple of days later he was full of energy, and by the end of that first week, when he was doing the garage, I just said, gosh, I don't believe it, this is a miracle drug.
On the basis of the preliminary results, ANZAC Cancer Trials Group and Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia have jointly agreed to fund a multi-centre randomised trial to test this therapy.
That was just sheer coincidence that's been talked about for the last hour. I must stress, this is not a cure, right? This is a video depicting a world-leading trial that we're just starting in Australia, and we're very proud to have done that. Prostate Cancer Australia really has a vision of three things: research, support and awareness, which pretty much aligns to PCFA. We've funded about $63 million worth of research over the last 8 or 9 years, and this just is an indication of what we're currently doing. Okay, this is the first one. So this is, my discussion today was really just to give you a feel of what we do. As I said, we don't do it any better, we just do it bigger. We have some specific issues in Australia like distance that aren't necessarily common to New Zealand. We have about 20,000 men a year diagnosed with prostate cancer in Australia, and because it has a long period of life generally, depending on when you were diagnosed, there's at least 200,000 men each year who are living with or have lived with prostate cancer. That's the $63 million research figure I just mentioned. We issue 61,000 pieces of information a year. Again, because of population, we have 170 support groups. I'll talk to you about those in a minute. I will take the opportunity to thank all the people in the room that were here yesterday doing support group training. You know, it's a wonderful contribution back to the community. I had a prostatectomy about 13 years ago, and I'm not sure if I made the error of saying to my surgeon, if I can be of any help, let me know, and I became the moderator of the support group at his hospital, and here I am 13 years later. So I've got to thank everybody for their community assistance in that regard. We have 100 ambassadors in Australia. These are people who we train to present to the community, because our awareness, of course, needs to be disseminated throughout throughout the community. So we have 100 trained people who are spread throughout Australia, who will go either proactively because we try and go and do that, or people will come to us and say, we'd like a speaker at our Rotary meeting or whatever, and they go out and present. Now, they are trained, they're accredited, and they speak to the topic in terms of our training, our ambassador videos. We have a website, which you do too. We have 319,000 hits on that website annually. Social media reach is 167,000. We have a subscriber newsletter of 23,000. We have constant donors, not necessarily always regular, but constant, of 17,000. And we have an audience for our awareness campaigns. We do a thing that's called convenience advertising, which is an interesting name for toilet advertising in both ladies and men's toilets. And you've seen those signs, I'm sure, in New Zealand bathrooms. But we also have, in some, we have little slots where they can take a pamphlet and contact us, and so the feedback is quite remarkable from that source. We actually match that spending with specific sponsorship. So one of our sponsors does just that program for us. I mentioned research, and the video is to come last, but it was relevant. Our research, actual fact, crosses over quite a lot of areas. So we do some basic research, we do clinical research. More and more, and recently we've been doing survivorship research. Our research program for many years, it's a very well standard, internationally peer-reviewed research program. Our Research Advisory Council present to the board people that actual fact meet the criteria, and then all the board does is approve that to the level of the money we've got to spend in any 1 year. But we've made two changes recently. One is that we used to allocate money for research and then try and go out and fund it. What we do now is we've now decided we better have the money in the bank before we actually fact go out and spend it. The second is that we want to try and develop research because our resources are limited. We're competing at big research institutes, and we want to try and come up with ways and means that we can recommend people and actually fact put our research program for tender and have people come back to us to maybe spend our money more wisely and hopefully get better results. That's just happening in 2018. This just gives you an idea of the diversity of the areas, and you'll see things there that are PSMA oriented, and PSA oriented, exercise oriented, etc. 5 years ago, we didn't have any specialty prostate cancer nurses. We now have 45 nurses funded by PCFA and the government. About half the nurses are fully funded by the government, the other half are funded by PCFA. And they're now located in 45 areas around Australia. We have intention of trying to have over 100. We have a need for over 100. This is where, of course, geography comes into our difference. We actually only found out this morning what I thought was unique to Australia is we have a 26% greater morbidity for men who live in regional areas of Australia rather than urban areas of Australia. And I put that down to sheer distance. But I heard this morning that the statistics are reasonably the same here in terms of urbanisation and not. But we have to control that. We have to train them. We have to induct them. It's a massive program. And hopefully it'll get to 100 in the next couple of years. I was going to tell you what happens in the day of a specialty prostate cancer nurse, but we've had so many good talks today on nursing. This is a bit superfluous, so I'll move into it. This is a speech that's much better delivered by the nurse herself as well, rather than me. I mentioned before we have 170 support groups, and they're very important, and they've been with us since the beginning. Not all 170. I think 10 years ago we had about 30. But what we've done more recently is we've developed a National Support and Community Outreach Committee, because support groups by their very nature probably only represent 5% of the population that is affected or has touched prostate cancer. And so in terms of awareness and support, there's a lot more people out there who need to be assisted than associated with support groups. And so this is a group that we brought together, and we brought together people from throughout the community. And as you can see there, they're geographically based, age-based, gender-based, sexual orientation, English as a second language, Indigenous, and current support groups and ambassadors. Just to take our current support groups, for instance, we have young support groups. So they're traditionally geographically based, but we actually have some specific based support groups in terms of people who have been diagnosed younger. We have, I think, five gay groups, support groups, because gay men have some different variations on their behaviour and their psychology of being diagnosed. The second language, Australia, I quoted before, 1 in 4 people in Sydney was not born in Australia, and 1 in 4 people in Sydney's parents were not born in Australia. So we have a very multicultural country. Last quarter I noted that we have one page on our website that says things you need to know about prostate cancer. And in the last quarter, 7% of the visits to that site were to our Vietnamese page. So we actually, in fact, translate into 5 other languages. And 12% were visits for people visiting our Arabic page. And so these are some differences we also have in terms of the multicultural nature of our country. We also print lots of leaflets that go out to those communities, and we have outreach programs specifically for ethnic groups. And Indigenous, our Indigenous issue, a lot of our Aboriginal people are not necessarily easy to locate. They're not necessarily that educated. They have some superstitions and cultural issues in terms of talking about prostate cancer. So we actually have a program of ambassadorship where we've developed, we have meetings that are very informal. They might be around a creek bed, they might be on a tree stump. And what we're actually showing them is pictures rather than leaflets and discussion points. But at least because their incidence is also greater than the general population. This is just telling you what we do with that outreach committee. And we're very much directed towards online at the moment. Our website is growing in terms of participation. We have an online community. Now, the online community you have to register for, and people like you would be obvious candidates. When I say register, you just put your name and your website address up, and then you can make access anytime you like. But this is providing things. We have a full-time blog writer. Wendy Winnall is our full-time blog writer, and there's blogs going up sort of weekly from different topics. The one that's been the most popular this current year is an blog she wrote on nerve transplants for erectile dysfunction, which is being worked on internationally. We also have a community forum where people can go on and ask a question, like the questions that were asked here today, and get feedback from members of the community and start a chat. And we also have a video gallery where we get video content. We have things in Australia called community conversations, where we will get together in a major city. We do it 3 times a year. We probably have 500 people come, just public invitation, where we'll have speakers similar to this, but it's every 3 or 4 months. Those sorts of, these things today would have been filmed and put up on our website so that everybody else can have access to what we've been lucky enough to hear. These are our collaborations, just some of our collaborations, but it does indicate the one in the top left-hand corner is the association where we're doing that previous trial with. It's being run primarily out of the Peter Mac and along with 9 other hospitals institutions. Griffith University, we have an institute for survivorship. Southern Queensland University are doing a specific study into rural health and ways in which to overcome that over time. Edith Cowan University is doing one into exercise, and we heard about that today. So we have a very varied research program. And the most necessary thing, of course, is sponsors. I always say our people never run out of ways of spending the money. And so if we have no fundraising, we have no nothing. So fundraising is very important. It's something that I concentrate on a lot in my position on the board. And this is just some of the... they're quite interesting. I mean, you'll take the New Holland one. The New Holland one is a tractor company. And they're the 3rd largest tractor company in the world. They've been operating in Australia since 1908. I'd never heard of them until 5 years ago, right? But they run field days out in the country, at field days where they have their tractors, they have our booths, someone goes along and talks to the farmers that might come to the field day. So there are other ways in which your sponsors can help other than just raise money, which they do, of course, as well. So that's really what we do. As I said, our hearts are exactly where your hearts are. We're just trying to help people affected. Hopefully we will get to a time when we have a fence above the cliff and not an ambulance below it. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask me.